sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning?
I'm Paul Bennett at Shoestring Shipyard here in Millbridge, Maine. We're located along Maine's Bold Coast, not very far from the U.S.-Canadian border. What you're looking at here is 6-inch wide, I think it's 9 or 10 ounce fiberglass tape. When I say tape, that's what it's called in the industry. It doesn't have any adhesive. It's just that the edges are all stitched so that it doesn't unravel. And it's laid out along the chine. So what I'm doing now is I'm beginning to work on my fiberglass layup schedule. And I want to lay this out. The problem is that each roll I have is only 5 yards or 15 feet, and it has to go a little bit further. But not a problem. I have another roll. I have plenty of them. And I'm just going to lay some more out and trim it. And then I'm going to mark this. I'm going to put it all together in one little bag. I'm going to mark it starboard side chine. That's the beginning of my fiberglass layup schedule. You want to make sure I have a little bit of overlap here. That's about good. Now I'm going to take all of this, I'm going to put this one with the longer strip, I'm going to roll it up, put it in a little plastic bag, and I'm going to mark it starboard side chine. This is just one of the first steps that I'm taking in setting up my layup schedule. When I'm finished, I have all the pieces cut out in sections, and I have them all marked and put them in order. I'll be ready to start fiberglassing the hull. I still haven't sanded down all the fillers yet. I still have to do that first. And then I want to take some thinned out polyester resin, it'd be thinned out with styrene, and I'll put a coat of that on first. And it's unwaxed. That means that it won't fully cure. And I'm thinning it out so that it has a chance to soak into the plywood so I get better adhesion and I avoid any delamination. And I'll probably put a couple of coats on like that. And the surface will remain tacky, and so when I go to lay this fiberglass cloth in place and I start to glass, it's going to stay in place. I can lay it out, smooth it in place. The tackiness on the surface will help hold that cloth and keep it from moving around. And then I'll start using the polyester resin to fill the weave and glass it in place and then work out the air bubbles. That's the general plan. Now, when I set up this schedule, what I call a schedule is all of the pieces are going to be in small enough sections that I'll be able to work that section by myself. I don't have any help. I don't have any extra hands. So I'll have just a big enough piece that I can attach the fiberglass, add the polyester resin, work out all the air bubbles, complete that section before the polyester sets up solid. Well, I still have good working time. Then I move on to the next section. So it's just a little piece at a time. And I'm using laminating resin, which means no wax in it. That allows me to apply multiple layers if I wish, or continue leaving a little time in between without having to go back and wash the wax off and sand it down. I can just keep going. The final coating of resin, I will add wax to it. You can buy the wax separately, or you can buy polyester with wax already in it. Most of the polyester resins you buy in the store at retail already has wax in it, and that's typically used for just doing repair work. But when you're doing new construction, you can buy resin, usually from a wholesale distributor or a marine supplier, and you can specify no wax. And that'll give you a lot more time to work and laminate your project, especially when you're working by yourself. So this is step one, and I'm going to go ahead and mark it. And it's a good idea to do this so you keep track of all the sections that you cut. You pre-cut to length or to size. And I'm going to mark this starboard chine. And all of these sections will be wrapped up individually. They'll be all neatly folded, keep them clean so dirt doesn't get in them. And they'll all be marked. And I'll lay them out in the box so they're in order when I go to start putting the fiberglass cloth in place. This is going to be the starboard side edge of the transom, and I've got that laid out. I can go ahead and cut this. And what I'm using these this battery operated, it's cordless shears. And it worked really well, and it cuts through the fiberglass without leaving a lot of, without ripping up the edges and having them unravel. And the other thing is that it really saves your hands and your wrist if you're constantly cutting with a pair of scissors. Because this stuff can be pretty tough to cut. And when you got to cut a lot of it, especially when we get to the larger cloth sections, that can really do you in. So now I can wrap this up. And as before, I'll get a little plastic baggie, a little sandwich bag, and I'm going to mark this. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and I'm going to also cut a piece going across the bottom of the chine. And again, that will also be rolled up and marked appropriately. And I'm doing all of the fiberglass cloth around the chine, around the outer edges of the transom, up at the stem. And I'm doing that first before I put the cloth in place. So this is the first part of the layup schedule. So you can see I now have my fiberglass tape all cut to size, or cut to length I should say, and they're all individually wrapped and they're all marked. So when I start to do the fiberglassing, this is where I'm going to start. I'm starting with a relatively small roll of fiberglass cloth, and this is roughly the same weight as the fiberglass tape. And what I'm doing, I want to lay this out to the first section. I'm going to unroll it. And the reason why it's overhanging the bottom is because you can see how much angle I have here on the transom. When I drape the glass cloth over, I want to be able to cover the whole side here, not just straight down. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to reveal this material. Now I could just measure it out, but sometimes, a lot of mistakes can be made. So I will physically lay it out and get an idea of just what I need, the size. Now when I do more sections further up the hull, it's going to be a lot easier because I won't have all this hanging over, and that kind of hangs everything up. It's a lot easier to move around when it's sitting on the flat surface up there. You want a little bit of overhang, but you don't want to have a whole lot because you're just wasting material. Okay, so I have enough. That's going to go right to the end of the transom up at the shear. I know where my center line is here, and I want to go beyond the center line a few inches, 2 or 3 inches. So I'm just going to mark it here. Going this way, I'll come down. I'm just going to cut it straight across. I'm not going to cut this section off. And I'm not going to cut the whole thing, but I'll just make what I might do is just slice it across the top, and this will just mark it so I know where it folds over. And right here, I'm going to mark the hull itself. I'm going to say, okay, I'm just going to put a long dashed line up here, and I know that that's going to be the edge It'll be that edge of the of this section of fiberglass. The other important thing, I don't know if this will show up in the camera, but I basically have the shape of a boat, and upside down, looking at it upside down, just like this is, that would be my starboard side. In this first section, what I'm doing is I'm calling this first section number 1. Okay, and I'm making a little bit of map. I'm making a map of all the sections, because what I'm doing now is I'm going to take my marker here and I'm just going to put a number 1 right here on the cloth. So when I finally have it cut, I can fold it up, I can put it away in a plastic bag, and I have a number on it, and that's going to correspond with my little map, and I know where to put each section. This is the section number 1 that I just laid out on the aft edge of the aft end of the starboard side, and now I'm going to cut it. And these cordless electric shears are really wonderful. I don't see how you can do without these electric shears. They're really wonderful. Just like a hot knife through butter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this up. And that's another thing, when you're cutting your fiberglass cloth, it's nice if you have a big open table or a big open flat space to work from. That also makes life a little bit easier. I mean, it doesn't matter with the fiberglass tape, but it makes a big difference when you're dealing with sections of cloth. This is a fairly large section of cloth. This roll happens to be 50 inches wide. It's the outer limits of what I think I can handle by myself before the resin sets up, so it's going to be a challenge. I can just mark this number 1. That's all I have to do, and I'll know which section this is. So I can fold this up. Each subsequent section that I fit and cut is going to be done pretty much like this, except it'll be a little bit easier as I work forward. And again, all I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it out, I'll mark it, I'll put it on my little map, bring it to the table, cut it out. Once again, mark the bag, fold it up, put it away. These will all go in a big box, and I'll have them all situated in such a way that the first section that I put on the boat is going to be the first section I grab out of the box, and so forth. Everything will be in order. That's how you set up a fiberglass layup schedule when you're building a boat. I know a lot of people don't with smaller boats, and for little small dinghies you really don't have to do that, but it is a good idea to get in the habit of doing this if you're going to build more than one boat, because you'll find that it makes the job go by so much easier.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor?